Alright guys, Geekman here. So what we're going to do today is learn how to install our Phantom Universal mod chip and our multi-region BIOS into our Model 2 Sega Saturn. What this will do is it'll allow us to run burned CDs of any region, backup games, into our Sega Saturn for our enjoyment. And we'll go through the methodology of installing this mod chip and multi-region BIOS. The things you'll need today are going to be, of course, solder. You're going to need some isopropyl alcohol. 91% is good. The higher the better. It's just going to be to clean up the pads when we start working on this multi-region BIOS. There is some surface mount soldering involved, so be wary of that. If your soldering skills aren't up to snuff, you might want to practice on some old boards. So anyways, you'll want some cotton swabs to clean the board off with our isopropyl alcohol. We're going to be using some snips, cut the leads off of the old BIOS. We're going to need some pliers, possibly to help remove that chip. It is held down with glue, more than likely on the board, some sort of epoxy, and that stuff is held on there pretty tough from what I hear. And some desoldering braid is always good. I use size number 4 Pro Wick. It's been doing me pretty well. And I got some tape just in case I need to tape that mod chip for the region BIOS down onto the board for better placement. And we'll jump cut here to installing this chip once I get the top off of the Sega Saturn. Alright guys, so we got the top off of our Sega Saturn here, and there's a couple of things that we're going to want to look at when we have the top off of our Sega Saturn. First of all, we want to know what kind of CD drive assembly we actually have. So if I look on my Sega Saturn, it says on the board, it's printed on there, it says SAT JVC. So basically that's telling me that I have a JVC CD assembly. And that is important because these mod chips, of course, being universal in nature, some drives actually require you to do some jumpers on the actual mod chip in order to get the mod chip to work with the appropriate drive. And so I have 3 pads here in the top corner, and it'll be the same on all of these. The first one is for the JVC model CD drives. The center one is basically going to be your ground, more than likely, and your third one is going to be for your Sanyo drives, if you have one of those. So I'm going to have to make a solder bridge between these 2 pads here, and that will tell the mod chip that I have a JVC CD drive. And the other thing that's important is with a lot of these Model 2s, they have 21 pin ribbons. Now this may not be the case in all situations, but for most models it's going to use a 21 pin. Mine is no different here. I have a 21 pin ribbon cable, and basically when we get this guy installed, we're going to install him probably right here, and we'll have the ribbon cable coming from the CD drive into our universal mod chip, and the other end will just go right into our main board here. And they do include with these mod chips 2 different ribbon cables. One's for the 20 pin and one's for the 21 pin. Being that I am a JVC Model 2, I'm going to be using a 21 pin ribbon cable from this set to get this mod chip to work. So what we'll go ahead and do is we'll do another jump cut here, and we'll go ahead and bridge the 2 pads here on the board to let it know that this is a JVC model CD drive, and then we'll just go ahead and take the rest of this guy apart so that we can go ahead and install our region free BIOS which will be probably the trickiest part of this entire mod to the Sega Saturn. But if we're patient enough and we're cautious enough, we can definitely get this mod chip installed on the Sega Saturn. So we'll go ahead and do that now. Guys, so we've gone ahead and we've removed the shielding from this Sega Saturn. So we're now at the main board, and we're going to be taking a look at this chip right here. This is the BIOS for the board, and we're going to have to remove this guy and then prep it up so that we can solder on our new BIOS here. This is going to be our region-free BIOS, so we can play any region game on our Sega Saturn. We'll go ahead and we'll just zoom in on this guy here, and we'll probably start working here on getting it removed. So we'll just take another jump cut here. Alright guys, back here again. Sorry about that. So I ended up, what I did is I ended up just skipping the whole, using the clips, the snips, should I say, because I just got a little bit worried that I was going to rip a pad off of the board. The pitch on the pins was a little bit smaller than I anticipated, and though it did seem to work okay, I just didn't want to risk the chance of ripping those pins off of the board. So we went ahead and I added some flux to the board around the pins, and I went ahead and used my desolder braid and just desoldered these pins up. And after I did that, I took an X-Acto knife blade and I just gently pulled each of the pins off of their traces on the board until I was happy with the result. And surprisingly enough, this did not have any glue on it. So when I was working on one side, I noticed the whole chip was flipping up towards me. And that was actually pretty cool, because I thought I was going to have to rip this chip right off of this board really forcefully to get that, that chip off of that glue that was on the back side of this chip. I'm not sure if it's just later models that don't have the glue. I could be wrong. But yeah, so we're just cleaning up the pads here a little bit so that we can get our new chip ready to solder down. And you want to make sure that you're really easy when you're doing this. You don't want to be too rough, because you don't want these pins, or the pads rather, to rip off of the board. I'll just clean up some of the rest of this flux I left over. Look at that. That is pretty clean, if you ask me. So we're ready to put our new chip down. So I'll go ahead and get that out. And I think we'll just keep the camera rolling this time, so we don't miss any action, so to speak. So I'll go ahead and remove this chip. In fact, I bet you could use the tape that was left on here by the guy who did this for me in order to get it on there. Oh, Well, that's interesting. Well, what we'll do, we'll take a break here, and I'll have to figure out what exactly is going on, because if you can see here, there are just way too many pins for these pads on this board. I was pretty specific with the guy about which chip I wanted, so we'll have to find out. Be right back. Alright, and we're back. So after a little bit of research here, that is normal with this mod chip. It is a little larger than the original, but no need to worry. So basically what we had to do here is we had to lift the 2 pins on this side and the 2 pins on this side, and then even up the rest of the pitch from the back side here on up. And then the original chip is a little wider than the original chip, and to remedy that, all we had to do was basically push these pins back in just a little bit. What I did is I took a really flat and hard surface, and I just really gently held that chip in my hands and applied even pressure to the pins to get them to kind of squish inwards a little bit so that they can fit on these pads, because otherwise you're not going to make contact on those pads. So I've already lined the chip up as best as I'm going to like it, and we'll go ahead and we'll start soldering this chip down to the board. These 4 pins out here, they'll be reused later on, so I'll show you guys how to do that. But as it stands for now, this chip is good to go for soldering. As a side note, if I didn't mention it already, the original chip did not have any glue on it, and I think that was because mine's a Model 2, and on the Model 2 boards they mount the BIOS to the top side of the board, and that just makes it easier when it's wave soldered, that they don't have to glue a chip to the back of the board when they wave solder the whole entire board. But yeah, that was pretty easy. So we'll have to go back and we'll have to solder this chip on, and I'll go ahead and we'll get started on that. Alright guys, so we just got done soldering this chip to the board. I just used a good amount of flux, drag soldered these pins, and I used some of this Tamiya tape. This stuff's great, especially the fine tape. You can get it at Hobby Lobby. Basically what it does when I'm using it is I just use it to hold the chip in place while I'm soldering, and that way the chip doesn't move around while I'm working on it, in the event that it does move. So what we'll do next is we'll take a look at those 4 pins that we lifted off the chip, and try and get some power to this thing. Alright guys, so we're back here again, and we just finished installing this region-free BIOS to the board. The only things that we need to worry about from here are these 4 pins that we lifted on this region-free BIOS. So pin 2 on the BIOS needs to be jumped all the way over to pin 13 on the BIOS, and I just used some spare wire I had laying around to do that. And then on this side, the other 2 pins, we need to jump both of these pins together all the way over to pin number 23, which is the first one in this whole row right here, down here in the bottom. So we need to jump these 2 pins to these 2 pins, and like I said before, I already did the work. but this chip should be good to go now that we did that. And pin 1 over here, just hanging out in the breeze, we don't need to worry about that guy. He just stays there and chills out, just like the pin he always wanted to be, never used. So like I said, you jump pin 2 to 13, and the last 2 pins on the chip go to the first pin on the row right here, number 23. So we'll go ahead and put this Saturn back together, and we'll go ahead and start work on our Phantom Universal mod chip so that we can run our personal backup games and circumvent that copy protection, so we can do that. So we'll go ahead and get it back together and start on that. Alright guys, so we've got the Sega Saturn put back together, and we'll go ahead and install this universal mod chip. An important thing to note is when you're installing this, you always want to make sure that the text on these ribbon cables is facing up with the mod chip. And the other thing is that since I have a JVC model CD assembly, you want to make sure that you shorted the appropriate pins on the mod chip for the CD assembly that your Sega Saturn has. The only other thing is that when you put these ribbon cables in, you just want to put them in as snugly as you can, and then just kind of lock them in place with the tabs on the side. They're a little bit fickle, but you can get them on there pretty easily. And I already folded my ribbon cable, and I used some modeler's tape to hold it in place. The last thing we're going to do is you want to make sure that the port labeled MB21 leads to your main board, and the CD21 goes into your CD drive. And the 21 just denotes that it's a 21 pin ribbon cable. And then the last thing I'm going to do, actually I don't like the way this is folded. I'm going to fold it just a little bit more. The last thing you're going to want to do is get some electrical tape on that, just to hold it in place. So I'm going to do that now. Now the astute among you may notice that this is not in fact electrical tape, it's double-sided industrial 3M tape, and that is because at the current moment I do not have electrical tape. And when I tried to do this with double-sided tape, I realized that it's not gonna stay there, because the actual mod chip itself over here is a little bit thicker than the rest of the board, and that was causing me some issues with getting some double-sided tape action to hold that down. But I'd say that's in there, it's in there pretty good. It's not going anywhere, and it's also industrial grade double-sided tape, so that's definitely not going anywhere. I just left the backing on. So that's it. We'll put the rest of the Saturn back together, and we'll test some burned CDs. Alright, let's get this guy back together. Alright, we got our Saturn turned on now after doing the mods, so we'll be able to play backup games. So first I got Untitled here, Japanese version. We'll go ahead and try that. I wasn't a big fan of the sound changes that they made, but it is what it is. I would have rather preferred the arcade sounds when playing arcade mode, but it is what it is.
Select your battle fighter. Okay, the countdown begins. 3, 2, 1, go.
Yeah, probably shouldn't have done that. I haven't played much of the first Dodonpachi, but the chaining in it is kind of difficult if you don't know what you're doing. And the chaining in this game is basically that hit bar at the top. It's like a multiplier. It's pretty strict. So I have played a lot of Gunbird, but they made a difference with the port, whereas there's not. They didn't shrink the screen, so there's like this scrolling going on, and it's kind of annoying. But I've played enough where I know where everything is. Preferably, you want to leave that guy alive, or else the second one comes out. This is the hardest level in the game. Especially second loop. It's really hard in second loop. The starting stage always randomizes. I haven't played in a while. I've been playing Escalada 2 a lot lately. But the speed kills in this game are so good. Of course, I can't do them because I don't have enough power-ups. Like I hit. There we go. Well, I would say that this is a great success. So the system is working great, as you can see. As much as I would love to keep playing this, I think I'll let you guys go now. So, you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll see you guys in the next video.